Hello and welcome to Greenment. Of course, handling change requires work, but how about losing a sense, whether it is hearing or sight? What is the process and the shock that one goes through? Let's meet up once again with Dr. Hamed Al Sinawi at Greenment and find out. Dr. Hamed, welcome.
Thank you, Lakshmi.
Tell us, Dr. Hamed, have you ever come across people who found it difficult, but they actually chose to get help?
Yes, I come across people who usually go through shock, especially when they know they have a chronic medical condition that would eventually affect their vision or their hearing. For example, people who get diagnosed with diabetes, some of them become really shocked because of this. They keep thinking about the side effect or the complication of diabetes. They could probably hear it from a family member or a close friend. Some of them attribute like poorly controlled diabetes with vision loss, so they will be anticipating when is the day that could happen. People who actually are born with certain sensory loss, for example, born deaf or unable to speak from the beginning, might have a different because you have not experienced the opposite.
Yes.
Whereas people who lose their sight, some of them feel shocked. Some actually in the beginning go through denial, so they don't want to accept this change. They fight it, but eventually it catches them because they have to restructure their life around. Obviously, losing a sense would impair the person's ability for independence. So they will end up needing somebody to, if they can't see, for example, they will need somebody to help them walk around or get them with personal care. They will lose the ability to, have their own system of doing things. For example, a person would have to learn Braille, for example, to be able to continue to read. And that might be difficult if the person is at a certain age or if they are not accepting. So being more open-minded and learning to accept will enable the person to make use of the transitional stage and use tools that will enable them to cope.
This is on top of actually a physical change, anxiety.
Definitely.
It comes into the mental health.
Yes, anxiety, frustration, depression. So the person feels that this change has impacted their daily life significantly. Some of them will have to leave their job because obviously they can't perform. Some of them might feel paranoid because if you can't hear what people are saying, you might feel that they might be talking about you so it's
a lot of misunderstanding.
Exactly. And some people will have difficulty accepting, for example, a hearing aid, which is something unfortunately quite common with a certain group of the older generation. They don't want to use hearing aid despite the improvement in technology. They keep saying that
it makes sounds.
Exactly.
Yes.
So, having to accept that, allowing the person to go through this initial grief period, which is understandable, is for them to react in a certain way due to the loss, but it doesn't have to be sustainable.
This is especially true for people who are living in a very, planned, settled life.
Yes.
If someone is, in a busy life schedule, somehow they tend to cope.
I think they would probably feel they are forced to cope because that's the only way to move forward. For example, if your life depends on, a certain job, so you would learn new techniques, make use of new technology to accept some kind of disability. If we go beyond the senses, for example, if you have a mobility problem. So after a stroke, if a person get diagnosed early, get intensive physiotherapy and rehabilitation, they might be able to gain their confidence and be able to move better.
Yes.
Same with the speech, because sometimes the stroke can affect the person's ability to talk. So with certain speech and language therapy intervention, but this needs to be patient, needs to be persistent, needs to be determinant. So you don't give up and, you keep working with whoever is helping you with the therapies together.
So the will is the most important thing.
Definitely, and support. Obviously, family play a big role, so they need to be more understanding, more encouraging, more willing to help, but not to the point of taking over, because sometimes too much of help, it can have a negative impact on the person. So just like the balanced amount of help. So allow the person to accept the change, to develop their
Give them
own
the
skills.
time, maybe.
Exactly. And empower them to have resilience to cope with a new situation.
How can we empower someone for the resilience? That is such an important point.
I think by trying to be mindful that it's not easy for the person. Sometimes the family will have their own explanation that this person is trying to draw attention. And that is to me, that's very bad assumptions to make, because you already label the person as attention seeker, whatever they do. Instead of putting that label, try to understand why would they do that. So in terms of behavior, there's always an explanation of what this behavior serves. So for example, sometimes you could see the person's this kind of dependence on others. It could be a sign of anxiety rather than a willing. Nobody wants to be. In fact, some elderly people worry that they might be a burden on others.
Yes.
They might be worried that will be left alone. So what if? And sometimes, you have to be mindful if you are having an external help, for example, like a housemaid or a caregiver, which is an employed caregiver. You have to be to balance that in terms of to what degree this person doesn't end up doing everything or neglecting the person who needs the care.
So it's a transformation, basically.
Exactly.
And that would require, just like at any age group, teenagers, from adolescents to teenage years, whereas when you're a toddler or a young child, you're so dependent on your parents, emotionally attached.
Yes.
And then the same child, when he reaches teenage, changes where he's seeking or she is seeking for independence.
Exactly. So if you are losing sense, that can happen at any age.
Yes.
So it's probably difficult at certain ages when you are at the peak of your, achievement. You have a family to look after. You want to thrive. You want to develop your career. So this might act as a setback. So the way you deal with it will determine how you have a better quality of life.
This week, I came across a lady who had speech impediment and hearing. She went to LML school and then graduated, went to Jordan to university. She learned the beauty course and she's an entrepreneur today. So this shows that anything is possible if you have the right support.
Exactly, and that's a positive example to be shared. I think people feel inspired that others can do it.
Correct.
So this is a reminder that you're not alone. This is not a death sentence, and people can develop resilience and cope in a better way.
How can you convey to everyone, that is somebody who's going through these changes, plus their family members and friends, that it is possible? So you said first is don't judge them for the people around the person. Don't try to label them, whether they're seeking attention or not, because they are going through a very unique experience in their lives. But for the person themselves, at that point, they may not be ready to listen to somebody.
Yeah, I think sometimes if you keep giving too much advices, you put the person in the shut down mode. So they find it difficult to accept what they're saying, and they feel they are being lectured to. So they will snap out and say, what do you know? You still have your senses. The other thing is allowing people to go through the grief. I think it's more healthier than pretend that it's not there, because then if you pretend, it will always come back. It will delay actually your process of accepting. So if you accept early, you learn new tactics. For example, if you if you lost your vision and you want to use the white stick, there are certain techniques that you need to learn. If you want to continue to read, and then you will have to do and go and study Braille. So that's again, it's the earlier you accept that, the more likely you are to adapt and learn new skills to use one.
Brilliant. So that's something for everybody. You've given us an insight, whether you're the person going through the change or supporting member, whether your family or a friend. Thank you, Dr. Hamed, for your time.
Thank you, Lex.
And we'll be back with yet another